Hi, I'm your host, Reena Suri, and welcome to Thriving Changes, a place where we share stories from brave and courageous people who have navigated challenges, crisis, or a change in their personal or professional life and gave it a new meaning. It's a platform where leaders open up about their fears, vulnerabilities, and the journey that led them to triumph. Our hope is to inspire and motivate others to take their first step towards thriving changes. Today's guest is someone who knows what it's like to chase a version of success that looks amazing on the outside but slowly erodes your sense of self. Ashley Pintaric spent years climbing the ladder in a fast paced corporate environment that rewarded the hustle and perfectionism. Like many high achievers, she was chasing a definition of success she had been programmed to believe in: relentless output, constant productivity, and never letting the cracks show. On the outside, Ashley was thriving, but on the inside, she was unraveling. What started as manageable stress quietly spiraled into physical exhaustion, emotional detachment, and a full blown burnout. In this episode, Ashley reflects on the toll of living in overdrive and the moment her body and her life hit pause. She chose to rewire her beliefs around success and is now redefining leadership, work, and a sense of self worth that fulfills her. If you've ever felt the pressure to push through, to keep going even when you're running on empty, this conversation is for you. Let's dive in. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Reena.
How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. I've had my coffee. The office is quiet, so I'm in a good place.
All right, great. Thank you for taking out the time to be on this platform. I'm so grateful, and thank you for your grace. I know we've gone through so many reschedules, but you've always been so gracious in adjusting and accommodating. So I'm really, truly grateful.
Oh, yes, absolutely. This is real life, so we just roll with it.
Thank you. I'm really excited about a conversation. Our initial conversation was months back, and I thought that our listeners need to listen because just that pivoting of your career, the feeling of uncertainty that you went through, I thought that it was really brave and courageous of you to be ready to share on a public platform, and it's not easy.
I am a little nervous.
That's okay.
So, if I'm
I think nervous energies can be very productive because I feel that you can come out really authentic and genuine, and that's what we want. Thank you.
thank you.
How we usually start is that I request my guests to introduce themselves because I guess you can do the best justice to your story and who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you currently do.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Reena. It's great to be here. I am Ashley Pintaric, and I am the founder and CEO of a boutique marketing agency called Clarion Blue. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado with my family, and we've been here since 2008. But I'm fortunate I grew up in Colorado, so it has a special place in my heart. I grew up just south of Denver. And my background is a little bit where I grew up in a small family, and then I went to college outside of Chicago, which was really great. It exposed me to a bigger city. And then after college, I was a teacher by training, by trade. And then I went and pivoted and went overseas and lived in China for 2 years and taught English to university students. And I worked on a master's degree in intercultural studies at the time. And I'm so grateful for that because it really changed my framework for looking at the world and understanding people and communities and cultures. So that really changed the direction I ended up going in. And when I came back, I worked in a lot of business marketing and sales roles. I worked in for-profits and nonprofits, and then ended up where I am today after moving to Fort Collins in 2008. So that's kind of who I am in a nutshell. Oh, I have two beautiful, amazing sons who I just love with my whole heart. They're elementary school age. I have a wonderful husband who's a teacher, a robotics and technology teacher, and a beautiful, sweet little dog. So half Cocker Spaniel, half Golden Retriever. So we all love our animals, right?
That sounds so amazing. The family bit is where my heart leans more because that's, I think, really defines who we
Yes,
are, and it keeps us grounded, it keeps us motivated. It's everything. That's where we start. And
absolutely.
that's so precious. And
Best job of my life and hardest job of my life.
yeah, it's the most important element of our lives. I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Agreed.
Well, being an entrepreneur was not really what you planned in your life, and you work in corporate environment. So tell us that pivot, what happened, and how did you decide to jump into being an entrepreneur?
Okay, great. I'd been there in the office for about 9 years and worked my way up. I really loved my job and I loved my team. I managed a team of about, it would go from 7 to 11 people on average, depending on what our needs were. And having them as part of my job was one of the best things about it. But as time went on, I did have 2 kids while I was working full time. And as things progressed, people come and go, leadership changes, and people and organizations can change and morph. And so, where I ended up when I left was I had come to a point of burnout personally on every level, spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally. And also, the biggest thing that really was the final push was there was a misalignment of values. And I could no longer, in good conscience, stay in a place that I felt was unhealthy. And there was a misalignment there. So it was an incredibly hard decision to make because it was part of my identity. I'd been there for a long time. I really believed in the mission and the vision of the organization. I loved my team. But ultimately, I was so committed to it that I then ended up burnt out. And that there was a number of contributing factors to that. I think I did have postpartum depression, but I had had that with my first son and was able to work through that and stay in my job. So it really was more about a misalignment of values and expectations, how things were playing out. And I had to make a choice. I had to face myself in the mirror, right? And you're in many ways, when you believe in something so strongly and you love so many parts of it, but there's so many parts that are unhealthy, you have to make a decision. Are you going to look it in the face and be honest with yourself and your family, or are we just going to continue going where we are right now? I ended up stepping away, and I was pretty much a shell of a human at that point. So that's a journey I can talk about if you'd like me to elaborate on that. But it wasn't for several years that Clarion Blue really started. There was about a 2-year gap in there where I just went through a lot of healing and took some steps to get to that point. But when Clarion Blue did start, it wasn't something I had even been planning. It was not really an accident. I wouldn't want to call it that, but it came out of nowhere and it was a light bulb moment. So I can tell you more about that, but I want to make sure I'm answering and going in the direction you want.
Yeah, we will definitely talk about Clarion Blue, and I love the whole narrative of it, but I would like to just dig a little deeper into each aspect of it. So I'm more interested in knowing your emotional state at that point of time. How long were you in that state? What were you feeling? What would every day look like? Walk us through those everyday experiences that you were having. How did you realize that you're burnt out?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, I was always tired. And we can say that as mothers, we're always tired, but it was more extreme and I was sick a lot. So my body was trying to talk to me, and the part that was so at war was who I was inside. My values, my principles, they were fighting against what I was being asked to do or how I was being asked to operate. And I got to a point where I could not do it and be true to myself and my values and my beliefs. So when I left and made that decision, in many ways, I didn't physically collapse, but I figuratively collapsed. I was able to let down of carrying a much bigger weight, emotional load, mental load than I realized. I think it's like that slow boil, right? You don't realize the water's getting hotter and it's getting hotter, and then you're burned. And I don't think I realized how far gone I was in terms of being a shell of who I was once. And by that, I mean, I was lacking in self confidence. I felt like I was not able to do my job anymore. When you begin to misalign with either leadership or peers or whoever it is, or the direction of an organization, you get friction, right? And when that happens, you can start to question, is this my issue? Am I thinking correctly? You start to second guess yourself. And I had also hit a glass ceiling for women. And so leaving, I had to take some time and do some self reflection and pull internally and figure out, where am I and what do I need to do to heal and to get back to a healthy place. And that was a real journey. I am grateful for an incredible husband who is patient and understanding and loving. And I know not everybody has that. I recognize that is a grace and a privilege for me. It was much more like, I need to prove my value. I need to prove my worth. Am I good enough? Am I doing enough? And I think for myself, when I finally was able to stop and look at all of these things, I wasn't performing anymore. And I never really performed. I loved my job. I was good at it and it was fun. It didn't feel like work. And I was authentic in it. But I was also driven, feeling like my value was often tied to what I was doing or producing. We have a mindset in our culture, especially, of productivity. And actually, interestingly enough, having a master's in intercultural studies helped me understand that different cultures have different priorities and values, and some are more productivity driven and some are more relationship driven. So I think for myself, having to stop and learn how to love myself without having to produce anything was hard, and it was a big challenge, but I was forced to do it. And I couldn't be where I am today and live in a healthy way if I hadn't, because when you run your own business, you can work all the time if you don't stop yourself.
So, how long did you remain in that, let's say, in that unhealthy state before you finally decided to quit?
It was a while. We had had some leadership changes, and let me think here. I want to say it was 2 or 3 years. My biggest regret is not leaving sooner. If I could go back and talk to the Ashley back then, what I would say is, it's okay to leave. You are not letting your team down. You are not letting the mission down. You are not letting yourself down. This isn't what it was ever meant to be. And I wish I had left sooner, but for the mission and for what I believed in and for the love of my team, I felt like I wanted to protect them. I stayed longer than I should have. And also fear was a part of that. I had a steady paycheck. I was a director. I had good health benefits, and healthcare was changing at the time. What are we going to do if we don't have my income? And you stay longer and longer. But what you don't realize is, the longer you stay in an unhealthy place, it's the longer you need to heal. So the more time it's going to take you to heal from whatever you're continuing to expose yourself to, that's how much longer it's going to take you to heal and get back to a place where you're healthy. But if you are able to set boundaries, whether you need to walk away or whether you need to change some other things in your life, you can stay healthy, or you can prevent yourself from going so far into burnout and so far into the place of despair that I found myself in.
Hmm. So, did you have a plan in place? Was it just one sudden, you just decided suddenly one day that, okay, this is it and I'm out of this? Or did you plan a transition?
It really came to a head. And I know it's not like this for everyone, but for me, and my husband was, well, I want to mention him too, because he really wanted to support me in whatever decision I made. So, as opposed to being forceful one way or another, he was trying to walk through with me as I processed through what was happening and do I stay and do I leave? And always giving me the encouragement, if you want to leave, I am here to support you in doing that, but not telling me what I had to do. And I really appreciate that about our partnership. So it really did come to a point where one day I knew I can't, I have to resign. And I think I woke up and the next day I went in and did it. And I did not have a plan. Of course, we had been thinking through what do we do? What's the what do we do if I quit? Or what do we do if we lose our job? Or those questions that any family or person wrestles through. But it wasn't like I had mapped out what's next. I think at that point, I had a 3-month-old son and things were like a tossed salad at work. So I knew it was really, it had been building and building inside of me, like the change in values, the change in principles, direction. And it got to that point where I was, okay, I cannot do this anymore.
Yeah.
And so I walked away and it was very scary. It was hard, but when I knew it was what I wanted to do and the right thing to do, it wasn't hard either. It was, this is what I'm going to do. I don't know what's on the other side of it. All I know is this is the first step I have to take. This is what the next step is. And that's what I did.
Yeah, I can relate to that uncertainty, the security of a paycheck, and then suddenly not having that. But I get where you're coming from, that you knew and you were at that place where you wanted to embrace that, and that, okay, whatever happens, I'll deal with it.
That's right.
And you had some great support system. I mean, who can be your greatest support than your own husband? I think that makes it so much, it's not easy, I wouldn't say, but it's reassuring.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I know I wouldn't be here today without him. He has just been an incredible partner and servant to me and the family, partner, servant, support. And not everyone has that. And so
Yeah.
that does make a difference. It's easy to say, well, you have a double income. Well, remember, my husband is a teacher. So it's not like he's
Yeah.
working at a high paying
High
job.
paying job.
Yeah. But it really does come to a point in our life when we have decisions that are at a crossroads, such a major, if I had kept going, I don't know what would have happened. And my body already paid a huge price for it. So sometimes you have to jump, and it's absolutely terrifying. And everybody has a different type of support system, and some do and some don't. And we didn't have a huge nest egg or anything. We did have some savings, but the plan, which wasn't really a plan, was at some point I have to get a job, right? So it was never in my mind that I wouldn't work again at some point. And I like working. It isn't like I had to, was forced to work. I like to work. So even if I didn't need to, I would still do it.
I think I know what you mean, and I understand when you say servant. Could you elaborate what that means? I know we are talking about servant leadership, but I would really like to hear from your perspective of what your experience of your husband was when you say that, when you have that servant leadership concept in your head.
Yeah, he picked up servant leadership, I think boils down to putting other people first. And for him, it was his concern for his wife and what does he need to do to help her be healthy and to help his family function. And he really picked up so much slack. When you're at a point of burnout and you're dealing with looking at yourself in the mirror and asking yourself who you are on multiple levels, and then dealing also with postpartum depression, you don't have a lot of energy. You don't have a lot of margin capacity. And he stepped into it, even when it was hard for him, because he loves me and he loves our children. And I know that can be a rare thing, but
Yes.
he truly, he was cooking and cleaning and trying to give me time to rest and breaks and,
And take
find a
care of his job.
care of
Yes.
his job. That's right. And earn a paycheck. And then support me in finding a counselor. So servant leadership for him, I really saw him go over and above to help me and the family with what we needed and put us first.
That's just so beautiful.
Yeah,
It
it
is.
really is.
Yeah, I have tears in my eyes. Just
Yeah,
to
yeah. I am a very lucky woman. I know that. And I don't want to take that for granted. I'm so thankful for him. You should have him on.
talk about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Definitely.
he should be the star. He's the one that gets the credit.
You just mentioned a counselor. You mentioned, I mean,
Mhm.
he was your support system. So help me, walk me through what did that support system look like for you to heal?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, I had to give myself permission that I didn't have capacity to go out with a lot of people. I'm a pretty outgoing person, but I'm also a very private person. And I think that can be a misconception sometimes that because someone is outgoing and friendly, then they're an open book. But that's not necessarily true. And at that time, I just didn't have capacity to go out and be with so many friends. So it meant a lot of rest where I felt unproductive, but I was being forced to become comfortable with not being productive and it being okay and still having value. And then the other type of supports, besides my husband, who was the biggest one, was I knew I needed to get into counseling again. I've always been a fan of therapy. I've gone off and on in my life, and it's greatly helped and benefited me. So I wanted to find a therapist to help me talk through what was happening and how I ended up there and what I needed to do to really become healthy again. And then I had a couple of close friends that I was able to share more deeply with what was happening and also what had happened at work. I think there's that balance of oversharing and also being able to be open in a place of safety. So, some selective friends, a therapist, my husband. If you don't have a spouse or partner, finding someone that can be a trusted friend would be important. And then the other thing that I think can be taboo, and that is I went back on antidepressants. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of opinions out there. Are we over medicated as a society? Probably. Is our body and brain wired in a way that it's not perfect? And sometimes we need things to help us get chemically balanced? Yes, I believe it is. And so those helped as well. And I would encourage anybody listening not to allow their own feelings of potential shame and having to take any kind of medication to prevent them from looking at it if they think they need it. When you end up in a place of burnout on every level, there were multiple contributing factors. And to get healthy, you're going to have to do multiple things to get healthy too. It's not one thing. Just remembering that and pushing through the shame, whether it's therapy or medication or just rest, pushing through that shame is so hard, but it's so necessary. And it is not true. That voice is a lie. You
It's
should
alive.
not feel shame.
I totally agree. I can see so much of my story in this story
Mm,
because shame, I don't know why it creeps up when we talk about mental health. I could never get my head around it that why are we so comfortable seeing a doctor for our physical ailments? We don't hesitate in doing that, but when we are all burnt out and confused and unclear about what's next, who we are, and what's next for us, we hesitate to go to a counselor.
yeah.
And I'm one of them. I hesitated. So I can
Yeah.
relate
Yep.
how,
You know.
and how much time I wasted in and delayed my own healing by
Yeah.
not taking that step sooner. And again, the medication bit also, I'm again a culprit because so I have PTSD. I
Yeah.
deal with
Okay.
PTSD
Yep.
and depression, and it shows up as depression and anxiety. I was okay with talk therapy, but I was somebody who was very sensitive and reacted very often to medication. And so I was very hesitant about taking any
Mm-hmm.
medication. And
Mm-hmm.
we did talk about in our therapy that, okay, maybe that's something that I should consider. That's one thing about talk therapy, it's that it takes time. They need that time and story to rewire all the unhealthy functioning in our head.
Mm-hmm.
So, till the time I reach that stage where talk therapy has done its work, medication can help me function, get back to work, be productive. And I was like, nope, I'm not going there. I react and I'm not doing that. And I wasted 2 years,
Yeah,
Ashley.
I do. I get it.
I took an appointment and I canceled it, and then COVID hit. And then I wouldn't get another appointment because a lot of people were going through mental
Yes.
health issues during that time. And I
Yeah.
didn't get another appointment for almost 9 months. I had no choice but to wait because I really was very keen to see this particular doctor. And I told him that, look, I'm very scared. I'm really scared about how I react. Just a recent episode that I had gone through was that I cut myself in while cooking. I couldn't remember when I got my last tetanus shot. So I went, got a tetanus shot, and I reacted and I had cellulitis in the entire arm. It was red, swollen, and painful. So I went back and they said, we'll have to put you on antibiotics. And I reacted to the antibiotics. I still remember the day I was doing a coaching program and I had to take the exam, and I just collapsed. And my friend was saying that you looked green.
Oh my gosh, Reena.
I was really scared. I had valid reasons to
Yes.
pour medications.
Yes.
And he looked at me, and I love him because he had such a calm demeanor. He just said, it's part of your PTSD. I said, what do you mean? He said, you're always on a lookout for trouble. What's going to happen, what's going, and you just, it's not just you look out for physical things to happen. Your body, the minute you take something new which it doesn't recognizes, it reacts because it doesn't know the difference. Your
Yeah.
brain doesn't know the difference that this is a safe thing to take. And the minute I understood that concept, and he put me on medications, believe me, I've not reacted to anything.
Amazing. Yeah. I
Yeah.
believe it.
But nothing happened after that. And I would say that yes, I did go through some side effects of those medications, but I had to weigh the pros and cons.
Yep.
What do I need most right now?
Yep.
And is it worth the trade? But overall, it has made a world of difference. And I'm a huge advocate of mental health, of
Me too.
therapy, but it takes time and it helped me. Like today, if something hits me, like grief, I just shared with you that I've recently gone through some grief in my extended family. And when it hit me, it didn't take me down the spiral.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep. Because you know how to handle it now. Your body's
Exactly.
much
I've
better
learned
about it.
it. Yes, I've learned. I have tools and resources that I can
Yeah.
lean on. Medication can be
Yeah.
it's a controversial topic. There are lots of opinions out there. But again, every individual is different. That's what gave rise to the concept of this podcast, because I thought that, how much time I wasted. And that's when I started doing the research that how long do people take to pivot when they're going
Yeah.
through a certain challenge in their life.
That makes sense.
I thought it was such a relevant topic because I always had the choice to say no. If it doesn't work, nobody can force me to do something. But I didn't even want to hop on a call with a doctor to even discuss. I didn't have to take those medications. I can have a conversation and say no. But I didn't even want to open myself to a conversation. And what that conversation did was that very gently challenged my thinking around it. And in fact, walked away learning something new from that conversation.
So true. I think when we're afraid of something, therapy or medication or whatever it might be, pausing and asking yourself, what are you afraid of? Are you ashamed? Do you feel like you should be able to handle this on your own? I think depending on where you land with your beliefs, some people believe that it's a weakness and that God should heal everything. But I think there's layers there where we can say, wherever you land on that scale, well, if that is true, God gave us brains to make these things, right? And shame keeps us hidden, and
Yeah,
shame prevents us from knowing that there's a lot of people out there who are dealing with similar things. We're not
exactly.
the only ones.
Yeah,
And that keeps you depressed. It keeps you
isolated.
isolated. That's exactly right. It keeps you
Yeah,
in places of being unhealthy, an unhealthy work or marriage or something.
exactly. Our brains are designed to keep us protected and to keep us safe. And sometimes we need to challenge it, that are we becoming too comfortable? And the same questions you, I think, laid it out brilliantly, that what am I afraid of, and is that a fact, or is it just my fear telling me a story?
Yeah,
I love this conversation.
me too.
All right, coming back to, you pivoted, of course you took time to heal. Were you off work? Did you stay back at home at that time?
Yeah, I didn't work at least for the first year. I was actually diagnosed when I started therapy with PTSD. So I was clinically diagnosed with that. And I think that was a combination of things. But I took the time. I wanted to work, I couldn't work.
Yeah.
And it's easy to misunderstand that. But when you come to a point where you are fully broken, sometimes just waking up in the morning is almost the biggest challenge you have, and just getting out of bed.
Yeah.
So I did not work that first year. I tried my best to be a wife and a mother as much as I could give, and worked really hard to try to give myself permission to rest. That took energy too, just to allow myself that. So it wasn't until the second year that I started looking for jobs, dabbling a little bit with applying for jobs. I was trying to figure out, what do I want to do? And I started volunteering at local nonprofits to get out of the house, to start making reconnections, to rebuild my confidence. And I was volunteering and starting to do a little bit more socializing. And then one thing led to another, where I've got this friend asking for marketing input and help, and I've got this friend wanting to know about their brand. And then doing a little bit more volunteering, marketing volunteering for these nonprofits, local nonprofits. And pretty soon I had a lot happening that I was volunteering for, but I was still applying for jobs. And it never occurred to me
That this can be a job.
it'd be a thing. And one day my husband, he came to me, he's, hey, babe, you need to get paid for this. He's like, sweetie, I love you, but you can't just work for free anymore. It was at that moment I was, oh, right. I can start charging consulting fees, right? I know. So it shows you how sometimes we get stuck in one lane of thinking in one direction. And it takes someone else outside of the situation to say, hey, this is what I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
Why don't you take a look at that?
Ashley, there's so many commonalities in our
Oh,
story.
wow.
I'm discovering this in this conversation.
Oh, my
My
gosh.
son told me that mom, I was volunteering everywhere for business consulting and coaching and doing workshops. He said, you can get paid for this.
You should get paid for that, Mom. That's
Yeah,
free work.
yeah.
Good for your son. Good for your son.
It's amazing. It's
Wow.
funny. All right, so now let's talk about Carrion Blue. So how did it formally happen, and what were you going through at that time? Walk me through all aspects, the brains behind it, the logic behind it, as well as your emotional, what you
Yeah.
went through.
Yeah. As soon as I realized maybe I can charge for this, I still hadn't fully committed to just starting, this is it for long term, but I started adding, giving a fee. This is my hourly, and getting more paid business. And I realized, if I'm going to charge like I'm a consultant, I got to have a business. I got to have an LLC, and I have to have a name. So I literally I'm going to pick a name. I was Premier Marketing, and I got a one-page website that was literally slapped it up. I don't even think I did anything to it. It was a template, put the name in there. And it was really word of mouth that I was working, and I was working very part-time. But I had picked a name and I was moving forward. My business was coming through referrals. I was doing individual consulting at the time. And that was, I want to say 2019, right before COVID. And then I realized I'm enjoying this. I'm going to stop looking for jobs right now and I'm going to focus on this and see what happens. So COVID hit. Definitely some of the companies that were looking to hire me halted, right? Nobody knew what was going to happen. And I can definitely say there was fear. Anytime you step out to do something new, you're going to come up against some type of fear. I think the biggest one for me, and I still have to push through this at times, is fear of failure and not being perfect and somebody not approving of the quality of my work. And I think that can be tied to where there's a misunderstanding of who you are as a person and who your value is. We all fail at things, but it doesn't mean we're a failure. Even if my business had to close at some point, it doesn't mean I failed at it. I was successful at it, but it meant this is another chapter. Or maybe now it's not the right thing to do. There was that fear. I will say that I needed to volunteer initially because when you come out of so much trauma, it takes a while to rebuild your confidence and remember, oh, yes, I do know what I'm doing. I can do this. I was good at this. And change the narrative in your brain. When you stay in unhealthy environments too long, it rewires your brain. And so you have to rewire it back, or you have to rewire it into a healthy place. And so when I finally picked a name and I continued moving forward, made it through COVID. There's a lot there. We all have COVID stories, challenges. But it was in, I want to say, it's been at least 3, maybe 4 years when I really got serious about my business and was I want to pick a new name. I want to rebrand. I want to make this really official. So I took some time. I ended up with the word clarion blue. Clarion means brilliantly clear. And one of the things that we're really known for is helping to make branding and marketing clear for clients and for customers. And so my tagline is obviously brilliantly clear marketing. And we see that through the data insights we bring, the messaging we use, all of those things. So I've really spent the last 7, 8 years developing a network of specialists, really good people who are really good at what they do. And I'm able to pull in the right team at the right time. But it was a journey. There are lots of moments of fear, lots of moments of uncertainty. I think when you run your own business, or whether or not you're in a corporate environment or a small business, having that growth mindset and always looking to learn and push yourself is important. You'll never know if you can do it until you try and until you continue to pour into yourself and in others to grow and learn. And that's what happened. But I do have one funny story. If anybody is listening, it's scary. When you put yourself out there, if you're an entrepreneur, or even if you're applying for a new job, that's a big leap. You're vulnerable. You feel that vulnerability. And so when I picked the name Clarion Blue and I redid my website, did a legitimate website for myself, and I remember when I launched it, I was, here I go, launched it into the world. And then I was, oh my gosh, okay, I got to go apply for jobs. I can't do this. It was so vulnerable. It was really official. I am out here for the world to see, and everyone is going to know if I succeed or fail. And really having to push through every day, it doesn't matter what other people think. People will have an opinion. And I'm not saying we don't function from interaction and approval from others. Yes, it matters to a point, but if I am living according to my values and principles and I'm doing the best I can and I'm doing business with integrity and ethically, and my purpose is to help other people be better than the best version of themselves possible through branding and marketing or however we interact with them, then it doesn't matter if someone wants to judge from what little part they know. They can only see this little part and they don't know what's happening in the background. And if I focus on others, if I am conscious about what's happening around me and the people that are looking to me for guidance, if I'm focusing on meeting their needs, that I'm not worried about myself and whether or not I'm getting approval. And that is a game changer, because then you're not worried about that. You're really focused on serving others. Yeah. That was my moment of, oh my gosh, I'm too vulnerable. Okay, I got to go work for somebody. I updated my resume that night, and then of course I never really applied anywhere. It was just, all right, cool, I'm
It,
done. I did it. I'm
yeah,
out.
it's scary.
It
And just
is.
to have that backup somewhere, what if this doesn't work?
Yeah.
But I can relate with that because I've pivoted to an entrepreneurial journey, and it's scary what others will say, failure. And if I focus too much on it, then I'll never really remain connected to what drives me.
Definitely. And I think learning that it's okay to fail. Like there's times you might get it wrong, or that client project isn't going to go great. And you say, I'm sorry, that did not go as planned.
Yeah.
Let's make this right. Or what can we do differently? Or, well, that didn't work and that was a mess, but we learned from it and we're going to move. We can own what we can own, and we can also not own what we shouldn't.
So those mistakes and failures are part of life. I can go back, and there are so many things that I've gone back. Oh, this is not working for me, and okay, let's change that. And it's, I think, a normal part of growing up and just maturing with life. And
Yeah.
if we don't make mistakes, we'll never learn. And
Yeah.
there's nothing like perfection. I think it's a myth.
It is a myth. It is, and it's not healthy.
It's not healthy.
It
Yeah.
doesn't mean we can't strive for excellence. That's
But
different.
excellent, that's different. It's excellence is I will put in my best in doing that in what I believe. And I think a part of excellence is also learning that, okay, if this is not working, what can we do differently to be the best in whatever you're doing? I know that you're a person who's deeply committed to your values and your purpose. And so, what would you say some of your values are, and what is your purpose?
I spent some time, I want to say about 2 years ago, I hired a business coach, and she was really fantastic and really helped me hone my purpose statement. And I have one both for myself personally and then one for Clarion Blue. So do you want me
Okay.
to read them to you?
Yes, please. I would love to hear that.
My personal purpose statement, and this is something that I wanted to align with my life as a whole. This idea that work and business is separate is totally a myth. We are whole beings, and all of it works together and impacts the other, right? My personal purpose statement is built on integrity and erring on the side of love. I exist to empower people and organizations to become their best selves through instruction that equips and empowers, discernment that identifies and solves, and life giving laughter that transforms and uplifts. That's what I want to bring to the world.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is so
Thanks.
beautiful.
And then Clarion Blue, when we sat down to talk through this is the Clarion Blue purpose statement and then mission statement. Our purpose statement is we exist to help businesses and the people within them become the best version of themselves possible through branding and marketing, making the world a better place. So that's our purpose. And then our mission is to provide exceptional brand and marketing services through educating and empowering our clients, tailoring our approach to every customer, and uncovering game-changing insights that give our clients a competitive edge.
Great. Wonderful. It helps so much to have that clarity, both for yourself and for your organization. I think it keeps us aligned in our directions in where we want to head and make those choices in life that will take us there.
Yeah. And because you had asked me about my values, when I read that question and we talked about that, there were just a couple that really, really stand out. And one of them is we try to do the right thing even when it's hard. Trying to do the right thing even when it's hard. And that can mean losing money. That can mean saying you were wrong, but doing the right thing in the context of what's happened,
Yeah.
even when it's hard, is important as a value for me and for us as a business. And then people over profits.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean profits aren't important,
Yeah.
but the people in your life, the time, that is so much more valuable, and that will last. That is what your reputation is. It's not how much you make.
True and valuable, I think. Getting that order right is important. because yes, money is important. It is a great measure of where we are, what we are doing. Everything that we enjoy and love requires money, but it can't become the be all and the sum of everything that we do in people, relationships, our families, how we serve, who we serve. They are far bigger and more important
Yeah.
than, and all money follows. I think it's a byproduct. If we have that, if we value our relationships, what we are doing, I think that'll come on its own.
I would definitely agree. Unfortunately, it's not a promise. Good people don't just automatically get wealthy, but I think when you run your business ethically and with integrity and you put people first, that goes before you over time. And it does, in the long run, it does impact the bottom line. And we see it with brands every day
Every
that compromise their values and it gets out to the public, and the public's like, I'm out, I'm done.
I think it makes so much business sense also. Come to think of it, I think we do maximum business with our returning clients.
Yeah.
And that only happens if they like you, trust you, and that's when they want to do business with you. If you don't have that foundation with them, they'll find somebody else. So why people will come back to you is it's largely because they like you and trust you and they like themselves when they are with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. They're their best self.
Exactly. So how do you look back at it all? Whole journey.
If I'm honest, it was really hard. I'm grateful for it. It was really, really hard. And I want to make sure that I say that because there are people in the middle of that journey, or there might be starting a journey they know is going to be hard, but it is worth it in the end. And it might look on the outside that other people have it figured out and that other people haven't had pain or hardship, or they haven't gone through trauma, or they haven't struggled to get where they are today. They might just look successful. And that is just not the case. There is always a story behind everything, and there's always so much more than we can see. And this could be an individual person or it could be a brand. I'm sure some people look at me and think, wow, it's probably been an easy train ride. And I don't blame them for it. I think we just see what we're allowed to see, but you're not alone. And we get through these things together. I think the other thing I would say to myself, or I would say to others, is this will pass. And I remember being in really dark moments where I was struggling with my PTSD or depressed. And it felt like I didn't know how I was going to make it to the next moment. Or when I was first starting my business, it felt like when I realized where I wanted to go and the vision I had, it felt, man, how would I ever get there? I can never get there. But it did pass. That passed. And it wasn't easy. One little step at a time. Some days it was an hour at a time, but push through it and find the help you need. Find those people who are safe and trustworthy and can help bear it for you or take on that burden for you. And that's going to be a group of people like therapists or a
Your
close
close friends.
friend or family. So when I look back, it's been a really long, hard season. And I would bet a lot of people would say that, especially because COVID was in the last 5 years of our lives. And I think that compounded things. But whenever you leave a traumatic and unhealthy situation, it always takes time to heal. And when you start walking through the healing process, it often gets worse before it gets better because you're facing all of that pain. So it was really hard when I look back, and it was also the best thing that could have happened to me.
Beautifully said. I think you've already answered that question before, but is there anything that you would have done differently?
Like I said, I would have quit sooner. I would have left sooner. In the place I was at, and this is not because of that environment where I was working, but also sort of how I had been programmed from the communities and my background, where you are wired and conditioned to be long suffering. And whether that is a gender role or something else, I felt I couldn't leave. I had to stick it out. I had to stay committed. And when I look back where I am now, when I look back to where I was, I wish someone would have sat down and lovingly and strong and kind said, "You can leave. You have permission to leave. You are not letting anyone down. You're not abandoning your team or the mission or your family or yourself or God or whoever. It's okay to leave. You should leave." That was my values, my principles, my gut, my spirit saying, this is not right. And I wish I would have given myself permission to listen to that voice sooner. So if you are feeling that, do not second guess yourself. I mean, talk to someone that you trust through what you're feeling and dealing with, and give yourself permission to say, I'm going to move on, or I'm going to do something about this, or this isn't okay. And because of that, I'm going to make these choices and I'm going to leave.
How did you come to realize that within yourself? When did that light bulb go on?
Yeah. And I've had this happen once or twice in my life where when I say broke, I was pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, or you're pulling a string and it's tighter, tighter, and then it pops.
Hmm.
And I remember the day, I don't remember what happened in the office, but I came home and I cannot do this anymore. It was not going to happen. I knew I couldn't do it anymore. And it culminated to that point. I
Yeah.
talked to my husband and he was, okay, if you're ready to quit. And I went in the next day and I resigned.
Yeah. But when did you realize that you're conforming to a world standard that was not your own?
I think one of the things that really did it for me, so I come from a background where faith was a big part of my life. And I remember as things continued to change, looking at myself and feeling this tension inside of myself. This is not how I want to live or be, or how I was taught love looked like, or the way that I would want others to see me behaving. I can't stay here and be true to those values. And I think if you can imagine like an out of body experience, it's like if I continue down this path, I am getting further and further away from all of these things that are values and important to me, that were part of my faith background, but also just part of what I believe being a
Who
good,
you were?
yeah, values, principles. And so I could no longer look in the mirror and say, if I stay here and continue to support this and these things, I cannot say that I am also these other things. And that is really, really hard to do. And it's not because of me, it's because of our psychology and brains and science. When there are things that have become such a part of your identity, the foundation of who you are has to change. And that's really hard to do as humans, and really, really scary, because you're unpacking things that you thought to be true that are no longer true. They can't be true. If this is true, this can't also be true.
True. Yeah.
So you are faced with it, and stepping into that tension and uncertainty of things that you thought were sure and certain is really, really hard. But it's the only way through it if you can actually, if you're going to stay true to what you believe those things are.
Yeah. And I think that's when I think it's so important to have a support of someone, a counselor or a therapist, because that non-judgmental,
Yeah.
unbiased opinion, having that can play such a huge role. And somebody who can reflect back to you that, okay, this is yours and this is not yours. And then you can choose, make those choices.
Yeah,
And
it is. And even to change some of the things that you used to think,
yeah,
like that behaving a certain way was loving,
yeah.
and having to change your mind or your ideology or thoughts around that is really scary.
Because you're challenging your identity. So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
like, oh, who will I be if I don't function like this?
Yes. And what
And
does that mean for what I believe
for,
in all of that?
yeah, for my family, for me, for my extended family, my work, everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. All right, great. What's next for you? I know that your company organization has seen a huge growth spurt in the last few years. So where are you now and what's
Yeah.
next?
I am so grateful. I have had some really great business coaches and mentors along the way. I would highly recommend at some point finding someone who can be that for you. And I have seen a tremendous amount of growth. And this year, I'm actually at that point again where I'm going, okay, where do we go next? Because we're growing some more and you have to pivot, right? Because you only have so much capacity. So
Yeah.
I'm really wrestling with where do we want to go and revisiting my own vision statement. Where do we want to be in 3 to 5 years, 10 years? Team is
It's
growing, businesses are growing. Yeah, that's where we are. We're growing. Do I have
exciting.
it all figured out? No.
No.
So if you think you have to know how to do it, sometimes you're learning as you go. And
Yeah.
that's just the
But I think it's a great place to be. At least you're thinking. You're thinking about a vision. If you're not clear about where we are headed, you can't pave out the road to it if you don't know. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I've never built a business before. So I wouldn't know. This is where reaching out to people who have gone before you is helpful. You know, give me your advice or come alongside me and educate me and teach me. And that's why we are not built to do this alone. We are built to do things in community and
Yeah.
support each other. It doesn't mean you have to have 18 best friends, but you find the right people
One or
who can help
two.
you.
Yeah. Who
Yeah,
can?
whether it's for
Yeah.
business, you find that right business
This.
coach or business mentor, or for your marriage or for your personal growth or your faith, whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
To have that, I firmly believe that we need to have those people we can model. It helps.
Yeah. And you wouldn't be here today if you hadn't just taken those first steps to do it and to
Yeah.
try. You're never going to end up here until
Yeah.
you take that first step
First
here.
step. And then I could identify who I want to be in the world and
Yes.
what my place is in the whole scheme of things. But that comes with trial and error. So I'm very happy about
Good. That's
that.
great. I'm so excited for you too.
Yeah. I always end the podcast with what advice would you give to somebody who is in a toxic environment? And you, I think, mentioned that a couple of times that you would have probably left sooner. Is there something more that you would like to add to it?
I would also say you can trust yourself more than you think. Whether someone is in a situation where they're being gaslighted or whatever it might be, I had a tendency to blame myself first. It must be something I'm doing wrong, or I'm not doing well enough, or I'm not good enough, or it's my fault. And to stop and reflect and recognize that your gut, your spirit, whatever it is inside of you that's warning you that something's wrong, you can listen to that. And then you find someone you trust and you talk to them about it. Because if you are in that position, it's going to feel confusing and it's going to feel overwhelming to you. And it's going to be hard for you to distinguish which voice is right. But if you can find someone, whether it's a therapist or trusted friend or a mentor, who can help you make sense logically, objectively, and see from the outside to help you make that decision, do it.
Yeah.
You need that. But you can trust yourself more than you know. You don't trust yourself, but you can.
You've really hit the nail on the head because it's not just you, Ashley. Any story, I would say that for myself, or any growth story that I've heard, this is a common phenomena that
Hmm.
people, it's the first place that you start doubting is yourself. That, oh, am I good enough? Can I do this? Is it worth my time? We just keep questioning it and second guessing ourselves and just losing so much valuable time and
Yeah.
resources. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, as that's the end. I think this is a conversation which touches my heart.
Amazing. Just a reminder, we're not alone in this.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation and opening your heart and being so authentic and vulnerable and honest with your journey. I know that it's hard and it takes a lot of courage.
Thank you, Reena. I so appreciate you having me on. It's such an honor. And It definitely is. I am not easily this vulnerable. I think this is probably the first time I've shared that story like this. So I appreciate you having me and your heart to help others.
Thank you. If you found our content valuable, please like, share, and subscribe and spread the word. I think the best compliment is being referred. That one action of yours can help us reach more and more people and fulfill the mission of thriving changes. Thank you for considering.